75% of my clients will say, I need to be more strategic, more intentional. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm reactive every day. I'm putting out fires, on and on and on. And one of the things I tell them is, yes, I get it. In your mind, you want to read a book and go, hey, I read some great article that gave me an aha moment. Now I can be strategic and intentional and all that. It doesn't work that way because you're not optimizing your ability to be able to be strategic because you're answering too many emails, you're dealing with too many problems, you're reacting to too many things. So when we talk about I talk about creating space in your day, on your calendar, and in your mind.
Hey guys, before we get started, I have one quick favor to ask of you. Can you please hit the subscribe button so that more people can find the show? Thank you. What is the driving force behind your leadership programs today?
Well, I think it started even clear back in college. I always wanted to help build people up. I always liked moving people forward and moving companies forward. So my role for years, I worked in change management and I was always taking companies to the next level. I always wanted to move everybody forward. And I like building people up and growing people. So it was a natural evolution once I decided, okay, I'm going to step out of the corporate world and go into full time where I'm not just helping the companies, I'm helping the individuals. So it was natural progression.
And working in change management, is that something that you see a lot of resistance to? Is that something within the company when it comes to change that you see a lot of resistance within the company to that change? And that's why I take it you need to bring someone in to help guide them through it.
Absolutely. And it's funny because people will ask me or they'll say, hey, I bet it's really tough with the impacted frontline employees getting them to change. And I always say, no, it's actually tougher with the leaders because change is uncomfortable for everybody. Change is confusing. It's uncertain. There's not a lot of strong direction yet. There's ambiguity. So leaders are uncomfortable with it and people are uncomfortable with it. And they're looking at this change is going to hurt them, impact them in some way. I always talk about they're going to go to the horror theater of the mind. They're going to think of all the things that could be bad about this. So companies, change management has grown tremendously because companies were not able to succeed with big changes. They would fail over and over because people, even if they say they're not resisting, they're doing it in the background. So that's one of the things is whenever I would come into an organization, I had to learn where's everybody's head at? Where are they really thinking about this? How are they actually feeling about this, even if they might say they're supporting it 100% up front?
You touched on a very good point there about you taking that step back to understand where everyone is coming from.
Mm.
What the it's like the feeling behind the words, and I see this a lot as well, is that people say something, but their actions and how they say it says something completely different. So while they might
Yeah.
say, yes, we're open to change and this is the driving force behind everything we do in the company and this is our long-term vision, you can see in their actions and how they respond to your questions, how they're still clinging on to their baby. They're still clinging on to what got them to this point. And while you're
Yes.
trying to kind of issue in this new change, they're saying, yes, but what if it changes what I've built so far?
Absolutely. You have to walk on eggs when you come in. You got to be delicate. You've got to respect human nature and human behavior. I always would joke with other change managers. Somebody's not going to admit in a meeting with their peers, yeah, I don't like this. I'm going to fight this the whole way. They're not going to do that. They're going to be, yeah, absolutely, I'm behind it 100%. And as you're walking down the hallway after the meeting, you hear them already starting to complain and find obstacles and barriers and challenges. And you got to get behind that and understand where everybody's agendas and priorities and concerns and expectations are to really understand what you're dealing with.
When it comes to change management, so you start off with understanding where everyone is coming from. And as you said, you start with the leadership. Leadership
Yep.
that lead, let's say, of course, when you come into a business, you need to start with the leadership, but you also have to help to understand that leadership, that change starts from the top down. We can't just, let's say, bring in protocols for the frontline workers and say, oh, and once they have that in place, it will make its way up the chain to the leadership and everything will be okay. Like that you just load all the work and the new protocols onto the frontline workers. That change needs
Mm.
to happen from the top.
Absolutely. And it's not just change. The biggest challenge is alignment on what that change is and understanding, okay, what are we trying to achieve? How does this fit our strategic plan, our goals and objectives? And you get different interpretations, you get different biases and different resistance. And one of the biggest challenges is at first, before we ever start working with the impacted employees, is we go, okay, leaders, we got to get you all on the same page. We need to know where your heads are at, what you're thinking, how you feel about this, and then make sure you're all on board and comfortable before we start taking it to the masses.
And when the alignment isn't there, how do you have that conversation with the leaders? And I'm sure this happens a lot.
It's funny you say that, Eugene. That is probably the number one thing that we always deal with because, like I said, there's biases, there's challenges, and a lot of people are protecting their turf. And so when we have this misalignment, one of the things I will tell you I did when I was younger is go, okay, I understand your thoughts and all that, and I hear you. And then we would still try to push things through. And as I got older, a little more confident, and have been to this rodeo before, I'd say, okay, let me understand where you're at, why you feel this way. What is it we need to do to get you past this? And if we change this up a little, so the leader over here is more comfortable with it, you're a little more comfortable, is that going to work? Are you good with that? So we have to go back and forth. I always equate it to like when a politician, a congressman is going to try to pass a bill. What do they do after they write the bill? They go and they shop it to all the other congressmen and see if they're going to get buy-in, if they're going to get alignment and all that. And if they don't, they come back and pitch them some more, and they come back again and again before they actually take it to the floor. So that's what we would have to do is we'd have to go and talk with people, get more and more comfort level on their side, get them to have more clarity and more feeling of this is going to achieve our objectives. Once we got to that alignment, then we'd go, all right, now here's the messaging that we're all going to use so everybody feels comfortable and hears a consistent message from their leaders.
And when it comes to training leadership or teaching a leadership style, is there a way of training leaders so that when it comes to the like of change happening in a company, that they are better prepared? That when it comes to this alignment of values, that they are more self-aware and more accepting of change?
Yeah, one of the things we always think about when we're going into, when I was with a consulting company, we'd always say, okay, where are they in their maturity as a company? And where are they in their understanding of how they want to grow and what change they're comfortable with? We need to understand what is it that we need to hit on that's going to make them feel the most comfortable with moving forward. So, yes, when we work with leaders, it's always very personal in how we, it's understand your audience. I'm not sure if I answered your question right there. I hope I touched on it, but if I didn't, please feel free to correct me.
Yeah, no, it's where helping leaders to understand that, and it's not only in a business context, but when we're teaching people about leadership, it's not just about in a business context, but it's also in life, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your family, taking care of kids, with your friends in sports. That leadership is, and the skill of leadership is multifaceted. And oftentimes people just say, oh, that person is their job title is leader or supervisor. They know how to take care of the situation, and if they don't, then they need to get a new job. There's no training involved. It's an innate skill.
Yeah.
Whereas in any part of our life, leadership is a survival skill. It's a life skill, and we're going to experience change in our families, with new kids, with a kid getting sick or anything, in sports. Nothing's ever going to go away. Someone's going to get injured. In a team, someone might be out sick. Someone's going to change roles. Uh, Anything could happen within the company. That change is constantly happening. And even with organizational changes, where you have change management come in, where it's like everything feels out of your control. If you're internalizing all of these changes as something that's affecting you or out of your control and taking power away from you, these are all narratives I hear all the time. It's where they feel, oh, it's out of my grasp. I can't control it, or I'm going to blame someone else that they're taking the power away from me,
Yeah,
and they're resisting change in that sense. They're trying to hold on to what they still have and hold on to that
absolutely.
for their dear life. It's like,
You couldn't
how
have
do you
said it
train someone
better.
out of this?
Well, it's funny you say that. I have so many clients that when they are being given the responsibility of leading a major change initiative, one of the first things I say to them is, where's your head at? Are you comfortable with this? How are you in terms of your awareness on how you view this? What biases do you have? What could come out in your messaging, your communication, how you lead? And in your life, when we always talk about, even if you're a leadership coach, executive coach, we're all life coaches because we're dealing with human beings. So whenever we talk to anybody, whether it be a leader or an individual contributor, and asking them, okay, what is it that is your biggest challenge of being stuck? Their whole thing is, it's the devil I know. And we always say, okay, so what do we got to do to get you comfortable enough with going, all right, I'm ready to look at the devil I don't know and make some changes, some sacrifices, some things that are out of my comfort level. And everybody's different.
When it comes to leadership,
Yeah.
as you say, it's the devil you know. It's the comfort in the certainty rather
Mm.
than the discomfort of the uncertainty. It's it, and this is I try not to take it too personally, but
Sure.
it's because it's such a recurring theme where we're trying to get people out of that loop. How do
Mm.
you get people out of that loop in an organizational context if they're taking something too personally?
Yeah.
Where it's like this is something that is in their work. People who take
Mm.
their work as if it's again associating their life's achievements in their career, and
Yeah.
trying to get them out of that loop where we're trying to make an organizational change here. We're trying to change for the better, as you have already, let's say, put in your plan, but that personal resistance to the change holding them back and holding the company
Mm.
back. How do you get them
Yeah.
out of that loop?
Well, you know what? There's several things that I've always felt were the best ways to get the quickest response out of them. And one is the with them principle. What's in it for them? You know, you companies will make the mistake of going, we're going to do a major change. And they'll message it as this is going to be good for the company, good for the organization, on and on and on. Well, people want to know how it's going to impact them directly. And what are the benefits? What are the incentives? What are the reasons? And I've even gone as far as to say, it may not feel comfortable for you, and you may be going, oh, geez, this is not going to be as good a job as I had. But what it's going to do is it's going to add to your resume. It's going to add to your skill set. It's going to enable you to do your job quicker and easier. It's going to provide you benefits that you may not see right now. And that's one of the things. The other ways to get people out of their heads is to go, don't keep worrying about how it's going to affect you and hurt you and change you. Focus on the process. It's like they talk about, I don't know if you watch sports and you always hear these coaches and their players say, it's like the coach says, focus on the day, focus on the process, trust us on this journey, instead of constantly worrying about our stats and are we going to make enough money, that if we do the work, the benefits will come. If we stay focused on the day and in the moment, the benefits will come. So kind of taking that two-tiered approach helps people to get out of their head a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel that it's the people who've been in who've put the hours in, and let's say who've done the hard work over the years and know the grind that it takes to get to where they are and able to make that change. It's the people who are in their short term who've been, let's say, put into a leadership position, but they've not put in as much of let's say they've been brought into the company, but they haven't put in the 10 years of work. And next thing they feel, oh, I'm going to lose this position if I mess up this job, and
Yeah.
they take ownership of that title, but they haven't seen the hard work that's gone into getting this far in the company, and they see it as an overnight success that they've just come in and in the last 6 months, wow, we've exploded, and they feel, oh, we're going to lose it all overnight if we hit that dip again in the next 2 or 3 months, and we see this quarter we don't hit our targets. It's like, no,
Yeah.
but you have to, again, it's like the ebb and the flow. You have to ride the waves. There's going to
Yeah.
be good months and there's going to be bad months. There's going to be good years and there's going to be bad years. But I feel it's when people don't zoom out and look at how does this flow happen on a longer scale, in a longer period. If we look back, and I'm definitely going off on a tangent here with, if you look at like the dot-com boom, and then next thing we have all the crashes, and that crash wasn't a 6 month crash, it was a much longer than 6 months, and then we see it all rise up again. Everything gets more digitalized. We're seeing everything with AI. Okay, we're in a bit of a rocky point now with AI
Yeah.
and
Yep.
other other things happening in the world, but these are rocky times. For some businesses are absolutely booming, and the other businesses are crashing. And
Yep.
it's just trying to help people to understand that there will always be good times and bad times. We cannot compare apples and oranges. Some are going to have good times right now, and others are going to have horrific times right now. And
Yeah.
then in 10 years, we don't know where we're going to be. And it's that level of uncertainty that keeps people stuck.
You know, Eugene, you made some really great points. I'd like to piggyback on those because it's funny. You were talking about the .com. That was one of the first things that came to my mind is this newer generation is really focused on the quick returns, the small attention span, things coming fast and quick and all that. And when I say I'm not bashing the newer generation, even me from a slightly older generation, um, we I tended to be someone when I came out of college and all that. I had a lot of family members that were working very steady jobs and very steady industries and just plugging along. But me with my attention span of a 2-year-old, and I think I had ADHD, I was always going, I want to find some young company that's up and rising and going to go really fast and I'm going to grow quickly and I'm going to have all these great things. Well, what happened is I kept jumping from one to the other, hoping that this was going to be the one, this was going to be the one, instead of going, let me look at the big picture and go, all right, as this is a journey, it's a marathon. And you had mentioned about the fact that when people tend to look very granularly at where I'm at right now, I want to be somewhere else. What happens is they get too many things they're trying to take care of for themselves at once. As a old mentor of mine used to say, uh, when people would say, the world is not taking care of my needs. My husband isn't helping my needs. A therapist isn't helping my needs. He would say, then drop some needs. And what he meant by that is simplify and go, hey, let me plug away at this. And when we talk about change, when we talk to a company or we talk to individuals as a coach, and I talk to someone, I say, okay, step by step. Instead of going, I want to get here really quick and I need to be here and I should be here. What happens is you're putting too much into your mind. You're thinking about so many things and you're not getting to any of them. You need to go, okay, here's my ideal state years down the line. Here's where I'm at now. what step do I need to take? And then the next step and the next step. So I've got a vision, I've got a path, I've got a plan. I'm being holistic about it. I'm being methodical about it. I'm being strategic and intentional instead of going, hey, I just read an article and I had an aha moment. Things are going to change for me quickly. And they're all excited. And 3 days later, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm back to the same old thing. It doesn't happen that way. It needs to be intentional, strategic, and holistic for you to change as a person and for an organization to change.
I love what you brought up there was when everything's not meeting my needs.
Mm.
And we come across this a lot where people say, and especially when they have conflict with a manager, and they say, "Oh, that manager is a bad manager. He's not meeting my needs, or he doesn't align with my values." And the first question we ask them is, "What are your needs? Or what are your values?" And they're completely at a loss for words because no one has ever asked them what their values are. No one's ever asked
Yeah,
them directly what their needs are. They're just these abstract terms that everyone throws around, buzzwords. But once you ask
yeah,
them, what are your needs? Is it beyond shelter, money? Um, what is it that you're lacking here? Or
yeah,
they say, oh, I just have an ick. And I was like, okay, well, icks are something you can work on.
mm,
An ick doesn't stop you from doing your work. But if someone is actually attacking your core values, if you're completely in misalignment, that's something that we
yeah,
can work through or see. Okay, if you're not in alignment here, we'll have to look might have to look elsewhere. But we can that's something that we can work with. But if it's such an abstract throwaway word saying, "Oh, not meeting my needs, not meeting my values," and if you don't know what those are, there is no way to move forward.
yeah. Eugene, I love your thoughts on that. And that brings me up to a question I want to ask you after I throw something out that I think really fits what you just said. Um, I've helped people with their careers too, when they're going to make a career change. And one of the things that you'll see when you talked about how you ask them what their values are, and they're kind of like, well, I'm not sure. I just know they're not being met. Well, when we talk to someone about a career change and they say, I don't know what direction I want to go, they typically know what direction they don't want to go. And they say, that's so weird, isn't it? I go, not really, because you've seen the things and done the things that you may not like. And coming back to my thing that I think really connects with your focus in your podcast, I remember reading something years ago. A famous writer, and I don't remember who, bear with me, had a quote that he said, burnout doesn't come from working too hard. Burnout comes from doing work that you don't like, doesn't match your values, doesn't match your purpose for too long. And everybody can go, well, I don't know. I loved my job, but I did it for 30 years and it was brutal. So I'm kind of burned out. Well, if you really don't like it, you don't feel it aligns, you're not a good fit, you'll burn out sooner. And when we think about how we help people move forward and achieve real change and growth, you have to go, okay, what is it that has kept you from moving forward? Not just what is it that you want to do to get moving forward? What is your ideal state? We go back to what is it that is not your ideal? Maybe what is your present state? How you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're acting, how you're moving through the day. So we know how we can move them forward and make those changes, if that makes sense. I hope all those connections made sense to you. I kind of went off on a little tangent there.
Yes, no, they really made sense. What I loved there was the when people say they love their work and they still burn out, and that was me.
Yeah.
I burnt out, even though I loved my work. I'd been doing it for I think about 7 years at the time, and people said as soon as I said I was burnt out, they said, "Oh, so you left that job?" And I was like, "No, I didn't leave the job. I loved the work. I just realized it was my relationship with the work that needed to change." It was my relationship with the work I was doing. And it was because I took the time to self-reflect on that. When I was burnt out, they say, okay, you burn out, you take a few weeks off work and then you leave. That was the loop I was told. You start somewhere else, you see if that works for you. If you burn out there, just leave again. And that was a loop that was being promoted to me. They said, "Oh, that's just what you do." But for me, I was so numb and unable to regulate any of my emotions when I burnt out. I didn't know how to regulate it because I bottled it up for so long. I just immersed
Ah,
myself in the work. So when I
yep.
got burnt out and I wasn't able to work, I said, well, the last thing I want to do is start something new because I don't have the capacity to learn something new, to take on that challenge. I didn't have the energy. So I stayed in the work, kind of stayed on autopilot for a bit while I figured things out for myself. So and that gave me time to realize I still love doing the work that I do, but am I doing it because it challenges me? And I realize I'm doing it because I'm comfortable and I'm confident in what I do.
Yeah.
Are my values the same? When I was 20 years old, are my values the same now? And I'm like, no, my values have changed a lot over the years. The the things that I've learned here, I want to progress in. And if there's no room for progression, then I'm not going to blame my boss for not giving me that progression. If the capacity isn't here for me to progress, I will need to look elsewhere. That's my responsibility. I can either
Mm.
choose to stay here and accept what they're offering me, or I can look elsewhere and see, is there other opportunities? And for me to have that capacity to say, I know what I want. I know my values are no longer aligned here. And I need to take ownership for how I choose, like what's in my control and what's not in my control. It's within my control to find work that aligns with my values. It's not in my control to tell my boss to make a career or make a role within the company that will fulfill those values if it does not exist. So it was which one is let's say less resistance, or which one was more aligned to my own values. I wasn't the one to push my boss to say make a job that fulfills all my needs without being able to provide, let's say, a confident outcome for my boss to say that it was within the capacity of the company. It made
Mm.
more sense for me to say, I appreciate everything that you've done for me here, but it's no longer aligned with where I want to go and progress in my career. So I'm going to take myself elsewhere and leave this position that has served me for so long open to another 20-year-old who wants to get that experience.
You know, that's wisdom of the ages. You've got that wisdom way before a lot of people
I
get
got
it.
around, yeah, around 28, 29.
Well, I was going to say a lot of us people got it in our much later years than that. And that's a great thing because that's one of the things I talk to so many of my clients about. I had three different clients within a 8 month period that all said, yeah, I don't see myself going any farther in this role in this company. I want to move on. I need to do something different. As we got to really talking it through, and I said, okay, I noticed that they kept looking outward. They kept going, well, my boss is doing this, the company's doing this, and on and on and on. I'd tell them, nope, look in the mirror. What is it that you need to do to better your influence in the organization, to change your skill sets? What can you control instead of constantly being angry with the external world for not understanding your needs and values and providing everything you need? And all three people, I kid you not, by the end of our engagement, were going, I realized I don't really want a new job because I like my quality of life. But I'm doing different things now. Since we've been talking, I've been focusing on some things and I've changed the word you use, my relationship with my work. And that's one of the things when I talk to people about my framework, the motto I call the Sea Change, SEA is a acronym. The first S is how do you see your work? How do you view your work and what you do? How do you visualize yourself as a leader or whatever? And the next one's the one that relates to you. How do you experience your work? How do you experience your job when you come in every day? How are you experiencing other people around you? How are you experiencing your boss? These are all things that you control. And then from those, how are you going to approach it, the A, differently? How can you take a different tactic, a different way that'll help you at the end of the day go, that was a good day's work. And on Friday, that was a nice week's work. I'm happy and I still have my quality of life. I didn't have to leave. I didn't have to do anything that I wasn't sure of. So you obviously already have that knowledge base and that wisdom. So I loved hearing your take on that.
I loved your sea change approach there because it really summed up. So when I was job hunting after leaving this job, and every interview I went to, when they'd say at the end, "Oh, do you have any questions?" And 9 times out of 10, people just say, "Oh, no, no, I have no questions," or they might try to throw in a pay question or a salary question or something at the end. And but the one question for me was I'd ask the interviewer, who 90% of the time would be my future manager. I asked them what excited them the most about getting up in the morning and going to work. What really got them out of bed going to work? And
Wow.
the most the most common response I got, they just shrug their shoulders and go, "Oh, it's my 9 to 5." And that was it for me. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you've told me all I need to know about what it is to
Yes.
work here. I was like, if that's how you feel about your work, I know how you feel about your team. I know about your future vision for the company. And for me, that's a no. And
Yeah.
then they were like, what a curveball question. And it's the interview process. It's like they're looking for someone to fulfill the role. They're not supposed to be looking for someone to fill in a gap. You're trying to find someone who will mesh with the team. And as
Hmm.
soon as I ask that question and they say, "Oh, it's my 9 to 5," I know they're completely dissociating themselves and disconnecting themselves from their team. And there was one interview where I said, "What excites you?" And I could see that they were so lit up with the vision that they had for their team and how much
Yeah.
they wanted to change. And they were like, I knew, okay, this is an exciting role. This one, I'm getting a good vibe. It was,
Yeah.
look, we're doing this and we're doing this, and we've got this coming up. And there's some other things I'd love to tell you about, but I'm not sure if I can do it in the interview process, and this and this and this. And I was like, okay, this person really is excited about what they have planned for their team. And I was like, okay, this one is definitely a yes. But it really helps to narrow things down. And even I have with my podcast process here, when I have a pre-interview session to get to know the guest beforehand. And it's in those moments that you realize, does this person really care about what they want to do? Does this person
Hmm.
really want to give it their all? Where are they
Yeah.
coming from? What's their motivation? What's their drive?
You know, I think you and I kind of do the same thing or did the same thing when I would interview, but from a different point. I would always measure what energy they brought to the interview, knowing that they've interviewed a bunch of people and they're probably going, oh my gosh, I just got to get 10 people interviewed so I can bring it down to three and all that, understanding where they're at. But I'd ask them about the different type of work and the different things in the role to see what might light them up. And when I'd say, what do you like to do most in your work? What do you think will be the most exciting thing about this role and all that? I would try to see their energy levels. You were smart enough to ask it point blank. I tended to try to observe their behaviors, but it's also, like you say, the same thing when I'm working with clients. I always try to see as we're talking what brings their energy down about their role, what brings their energy up, and what brings your energy up in the day, not just about their work. Because as anybody knows, there's energy drainers. There's we call them dream killers out there, people that will sap the energy from a room, and then there's someone that lights it up. And a company that has a culture that everybody seems lit up all the time, those are the ones you want to be part of, right?
Yes, but it's also understanding as well if it's with those people that are lit up, are they actually lit up or are they doing it to impress others? And it's
Yeah.
understanding that in the background, the narrative behind what lights them up. Because that was for me before I burnt out. I was a high achiever in a role that I loved the work, but I felt I had to maintain this high energy facade. And
Mm.
while I showed up the first few months really high energy, the nature of the work took its toll on me. It was intense work, it was long hours. And as that high energy started to dissipate over time, I felt the need to compensate. And then I
Mm.
switched to energy drinks or anything that would help boost
Yeah.
my energy throughout the day and maintain that high energy and keep it consistent. Over time, that starts to wane as well as you get desensitized to caffeine.
Sure.
But I felt that I couldn't keep that up long term. But I said, okay, if I can only do this for a couple of years, I'll maintain that high energy and we'll reassess then. But that didn't work for me. That didn't work out well in the end.
Yeah. You said it perfectly. When you can't maintain it, it's not sustainable. And it's funny because I was just talking with a client about this last week. I was saying there's a point to where you're trying to be seen as the calm, confident, highly positive, energetic leader, and you want to present that. I'm a firm believer in that. But if you're not feeling it for real and you're doing this, you're faking it to make it on a regular basis, that becomes suffering almost. You're turning it on when it's just not there. And that's a sign of, burnout, like you talk about. That's a sign of going, okay, I got to find a way to re-energize here in a healthy way and not to load myself up with the nicotine and caffeine and all that. And that's one of the things that leaders have to work on. And I know, obviously, you're expert in this, talking about burnout. Is what are the biggest symptoms of burnout? Lack of energy, lack of drive, lack of motivation. Even if you're a very motivated person normally, if you're fighting to do it, and obviously there could be worse cases, someone dealing with depression, but if you're someone that's going every second, hey, I need energy, I need more energy, I need more energy, then you got to go, what am I got out of balance in my life and my work that's making me have to constantly reinvigorate my energy? How am I not monitoring my energy? How am I making sure people aren't zapping it from me because I'm letting them do it? What roles and tasks am I doing that are exhausting me and tiring me out and burning me out? And how can I do them different or change my experience, like you said?
Yeah, it's in recognizing the, let's say, your capacity, your how much energy you have. And what I started to, let's say, my relationship with caffeine was that I viewed it as borrowed time or borrowed energy. And once I understood that relationship, it helped me to cut back on how much caffeine I was consuming, because I said, okay, I'm taking this at the expense of, it will give me energy now, but
Mm.
it's going to have, I'm going to need twice the time to recover later. So if this gives me an extra half an hour of focus now, I'm going to have a 1 hour slump where I'm going to have to take a rest later. And once I started viewing it in that way, that it was coming at a cost, then I was like, okay, I might need to cut back on how much caffeine I'm consuming here, because if I'm consuming enough for 2 hours of focus, I'm going to have to take 4 hours off, or take 4 hours back and not do anything. And then I had to understand, okay, how can I limit it here? One other
Mm.
thing I started doing was, because I got to a point where I was consuming a lot of like Monster energy drinks.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if I'm drinking a full can at lunchtime around 12 p.m. and drinking another one at 4 p.m., another one at 6, I was like, that's a lot of cans. Like, and that adds up over time. And what I did was I drink half a can and then fill the rest up with water. So it was diluted by half. And then I drink it to half again and I'd dilute it with water again. And I got to a point over a few weeks where I realized I was just drinking water out of the same can. It was just water. And the
Mm.
habit was no longer drinking the energy drink. The habit was drinking out of a can. And that
Yeah.
was that was a habit that was built up. I was no longer seeking energy from the energy drink. I just built up a habit of going to my car and drinking water out of a can.
Well, that's much healthier energy for you. I mean, just drinking water can make you so much more energetic. But I love the behavior habit or behavior changing and habit forming, positive habit forming, because that's how people have to change, is being strategic and smart about it. What do they say? Like, hey, if you want to get yourself to work out more, lay your clothes out the night before and make it so it's really easy for you to go out the door and grab your keys and all that. And so, like you did, you were replacing the drink with water and making yourself not feel like you have to have as much drive and motivation and all that, because you're putting the water in and it's kind of surprising you that, hey, it's still working. I'm still getting the energy and all that. And that's smart thinking. I like that.
Yeah, my partner hated it because she'd go to drink out of the can and she's like, "Oh, what is this? This is just water." It's like, "What are you doing? I thought this was
Sure.
watermelon."
It's funny because my wife and I were talking about this the other day. Um, we were talking about the fact that we're trying to get even healthier. We've been getting better on our health, working out and all that kind of stuff, but we wanted to get even better with our food. And she said something like, I know we're talking a lot about increasing our energy and trying to do it in a healthy way. I said, well, you know what? I think you said it was borrowed energy, right? I remember throwing out a line saying, we're using too much synthetic energy. We're trying to find ways, too much caffeine, too much sugar, those kind of things, like you say, Red Bulls and all that. It's synthetic, it's man-made instead of the healthy version of water, getting exercise, getting oxygen flowing, monitoring your energy that you're spending and all that. And that's one of the things when we talk about EQ and resiliency with leaders. One of the things we tell them is you've got to change how you're coping with the amount of stress and energy drainers you have all day. You've got to do it with organic and stop using synthetic, because that just brings you up and down and up and down and up and down. And you got to fill it back up once you get low. But if you do like you're doing with the water, you're eating healthier, you're exercising and getting more oxygen flowing and blood flowing, you have a steady energy and you're more able to think and innovate, be more creative. You're able to be more physically present and all that. So it's a holistic approach to it.
And it's a simple again, people think that the holistic approach is woo woo half the time. And that I'm like, they're so quick to turn to caffeine and nicotine and all of these and sleep aids also to get them through the
Yeah.
day, because they're like, I'll be high and I'll be wired all day, and then I just need something to knock me out at night, and I'll do the same thing tomorrow. And they normalize that. And then the flex for them then is someone who doesn't need all of that, who has a steady flow of energy. And they're like, how do you do it? And if you say to them, oh, I exercise 3 times a week for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, I go for walks, I do, I focus on my breath,
Hmm.
and I start my day with a glass of water. And then, and they're saying like, oh yeah, you're obviously, it's kind of it's that line in Lord of the Rings where Frodo says, all right then, keep your secrets. It's like you're telling them point blank, because they're like, these are the natural things that you can do to improve your energy levels so that you're more grounded and you're
Yeah.
not wired. And when you're making key decisions, especially in leadership, if you're wired all the time, and that's where you see your steady state, is that you require these things to be in your normal state, and then without them there's all the withdrawals. How can you show up as a leader if you're depending on the likes of caffeine and nicotine to get you through your day?
Absolutely. And it's funny when you mentioned about how people view the word holistic. I was one of those people years ago going, oh boy, the beads and spiritual and all that kind of stuff. That's not what holistic means. Holistic just means you're looking at the body as a whole and you're thinking of it. It's like they use holistic for systems in companies. When you have one system or process, it may be a system or process that's in your particular team, but it's connected to all the systems and processes. It's the holistic value stream of the organization. So when you think about that as a human being, people hear that word holistic, they hear them, like you say, when you're going, well, if you drink water and all that, they go, okay, that means weird stuff and I'm going to have to work harder. And I'd rather have the quick fixes of the caffeine and nicotine and all that kind of stuff. But it's not. Holistic just means you're coming at it from I'm looking at this as a whole picture of what can affect me, what goes into my stomach, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what emotions I'm going through, all these things. But people will tend to go, oh, that's too much for me. I can't think about all that. So when we talk about helping people through change, it's always, okay, one step at a time. We'll work on this little behavior and habit, and then the next one. And you build compounding momentum, just like you did, where you got to the point where you realized you were just going out to the car to drink water, but you did it step by step. So holistic can mean comprehensive, but it still doesn't mean it has to be big and done all at once. So we talk with leaders about that too, and how they're taking their companies through change, how they're taking themselves through change. And when people are trying to change and they can't seem to do it, it's because they're taking on too much. They're trying to fix so many needs, as we talked about. They're trying to think about too many things, and it becomes too big. You know, they're biting the elephant all in once instead of one bite at a time, right?
Yes. I think you covered this very well, where you said that everyone is making things too big and they're crowding everything in their day. And you mentioned this off the podcast about creating more space in your day.
Mm. Yeah. One of the things when I first talked with a client who, and I'm not going to lie to you, Eugene, I probably get 75% of my clients will say, I need to be more strategic, more intentional. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm reactive every day. I'm putting out fires on and on and on. And one of the things I tell them is, yes, I get it. In your mind, you want to read a book and go, hey, I read some great article that gave me an aha moment. Now I can be strategic and intentional and all that. It doesn't work that way because you're not optimizing your ability to be able to be strategic because you're answering too many emails, you're dealing with too many problems, you're reacting to too many things. So when we talk about I talk about creating space in your day, on your calendar, and in your mind. Day means you're making your day longer. You're getting up earlier and not making yourself rush and be in this constant reactive crazy mode. You might do something a little bit longer in the day, but when you get home, you're with family, you're present because you created more space to fit everything in. Then we talk about headspace. That's about going, okay, I got to calm down, I got to reflect. I've got to be able to not be thinking of a million things and trying to think too far ahead and worry about what's happening in the back. What do they say? Looking back is depression, looking forward is anxiety. And so we tell people find a way to stay in a space and clear your headspace. There's a famous meditation app. That's why they call themselves Headspace. And then when I talk about the calendar, people might go, well, wait a minute, you said increase the space in your day. No, I basically mean you're making your day longer at the beginning. So you're not breaking into any time later and you're still getting out of work at a decent time, but you're feeling less rushed, less panicked. A calendar is you're going, hey, I'm going to start reducing meetings that I'm going to. I don't need to go to them all. I'm going to stop letting people throw me all these projects over the fence. And there's this bunch of things that we take them through because people first go, but you're getting very tactical. And I'm never was somebody that was blamed for being too tactical. I tended to be, I'm an idea guy, I'm a theory guy, but you can't get to a creative, innovative, strategic, and intentional mode where you can improve yourself and grow and change until you calm everything down. You slow everything down. I used to think if I thought harder and harder and harder about something and worked longer and longer and longer, I would eventually get through it. That's not how it works. It's proven over again. Multitasking should be dead. It should be back to single tasking and going, let me slow everything down. Let me get space in my head, in my calendar, and in my day. and things will start to materialize for me. I'll gain compounding momentum. I'm feeling better, being more creative, making things happen for myself, creating my path more calmly. Long explanation on that, but you got me excited with that because it's something I firmly believe in. And I have a resource, a tool that I created called Optimize Your Time and Task Management. That's the first thing I give to clients. I'm not going to lie to you, Eugene. They usually make a little face like, oh, geez, I've got so much work and I'm overwhelmed and he's giving me homework and all that. It is at first, but once they do it, they start finding themselves getting that space and being able to calm down, slow down, be thoughtful, be meditative, and they start doing their job better. They start being more present for their family. And then they go, okay, now that I've really cleared out my space and my life and my mind and all that, now I'm feeling more creative and innovative and all that. And it snowballs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense because, and I can tell exactly by how you describe that. I know exactly what lights you up, Dan. What you mentioned with that time
Yeah.
management, and especially with optimizing your time with your clients, and when they say, "Oh, you're giving me homework, you're making me change something," and you can already sense that resistance. But
Yeah.
if what they were doing already was working, then you wouldn't need to optimize your time for them. They would not need to do this homework. It's homework for them because you're trying to implement something new. There's a bit of change there, and once you have that new system in place, it's the same as people getting back into exercise. It's like, oh, you're making me change up my routine. It's like, well, if your routine was working for you, the routine that you currently have now, then we wouldn't be here.
Very good point. I've used a line before. How's that working for you so far? Um, because people will immediately, even if they're totally open, they want to change, they want to do everything that we're talking about. Once you start talking about giving them work to do it and them having to be intentional about it and choose to do it, it overwhelms them. And that's why I always tell them, we're doing this to create the ability for you to not feel so overwhelmed that you can't ever get to this. Because so many of my clients will say, I want to do this. I just haven't been able to get to it. I just don't have the time. I can't. And my brain is too overloaded already. I can't do this. Well, like you said, when they first do it, it's too big for them. But once they start doing it, they start getting excited. Like, oh my gosh, I just realized I could reduce this amount of time I'm in these meetings. Hey, I can do more at home when I'm with my family. I can be actually having a conversation with them instead of thinking about something else. They have to see the benefits, but it takes a little time with any new habit or behavior.
Yes, it's. I think it's like that first 90 days of just being patient with yourself. And for me,
Yeah.
it was always about having the self awareness that this is going to take time, and having the compassion as well to say, I need to be patient with myself. That I can't expect changes overnight. And even if I don't see changes physically in the first 90 days, maybe having that discipline with myself and keeping that promise to myself for the first 90 days of trying to make this change, of making that effort, is enough for me to accept if I put my mind to something, I can make that change. Even if I don't see the results after 90 days, I've kept a promise to myself for those 90 days that I want to see change.
You couldn't have said it better. One of the things that I found as I've gotten older is when I decide I want to make changes on things, I may not make the full change that I wanted to make, but in the process, I made some changes that I didn't even think I could make before. And then I go, okay, perfect example. I was always an early riser. And as I got older and I was on the road all the time, I would get tired and I'd go, "Ugh, I don't want to get up that early anymore." I found myself not wanting to get up. And I finally, my wife and I said, nope, we're going to follow the rule of, get up an hour earlier. We start getting up an hour earlier. Within a couple weeks, we would wake up without the alarm and we couldn't sleep anymore. And when we would be tired, we'd go, that's okay. We can have a day that we're not doing as well. Like you say, give yourself some grace, get off your back and go, but I'm changing something. I am building this. It's going towards the new thing that I want to achieve, the next level. you're making advancement. That's what's important. What do they say? It's progress, not perfection.
Dan, for leaders who may have not listened to the full podcast,
Yeah.
what do you feel is your takeaway message for them? That if they were to listen to this podcast and you want to give them the too long didn't listen version, or they've kind of, they've been listening to this in the background and they haven't been paying attention to maybe the key points, what would be
Yeah.
the take-home message you want them to take from this, or an action step that they can take into creating that change or showing up for themselves?
Absolutely. One of the things that I firmly believe is too many leaders believe they're at the mercy of their work. They're at the mercy of their boss. They're at the mercy of their company, their role, the type of um, task they do. And I will tell them that's not true. Yes, there is influence by the culture, by your boss, but feeling that you have to be in constant reactive survival, firefighting mode and be available to everybody at every moment and constantly stressed out of your mind is not sustainable. And you can improve how you go about your day to where you're actually more impactful with your clients, but you're healthier at the same time. You need to have the courage of your convictions to go, my first step is I'm going to try to be more strategic and intentional. And to do that, I've got to optimize, which is the name of my book, optimize my ability to be able to do this and not keep fighting a huge wave of too many things coming at me at once and saying, but I need to change in this. You got to give yourself the chance to succeed. You've got to take some steps to do that, and it can happen. I've worked with a lot of clients. When I first started with them, they said, if you saw what it was like in my company, I'm never going to be able to get out from under this. I'm like, I disagree. You can get better at it. So that's what I'd encourage them is to not accept uh, being at the mercy of their work, their boss, their life, whatever. They can get more control of it.
And if leaders want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to find you, Dan?
Yeah, thank you. My website is impactfulperformance.com. My email is dan@impactfulperformance.com. And if they want to get started, take that first step. I talked about my optimize your time and task, excuse me, management. If they go to impactfulperformance.com /optimize they can download that tool that'll get them started on taking control, feeling more strategic and intentional.
That's awesome, Dan. Thank you so much, because one of the aspects of Give Yourself Some Leeway is helping leaders to understand how they can better show up for their teams.
Yeah.
And that starts with showing up better for themselves. A lot of them have good intentions of trying to build others, but they forget to take the time that they need to build themselves first. Only by recharging their own capacity can they serve others at their best. And that's where we see a lot of leadership burnout.
I love that. I actually have something in my book I called the oxygen mask theory. When you're getting on a plane and they take you through the safety things and they tell you put your mask on first before you can help anybody else, I tell leaders, lead yourself first, put the mask on, take care of yourself, then you will be better for them. You will be a better leader. So I love your thinking there. We're very aligned on that thought. Leaders can only be as good a leader as they feel good about themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like even as a parent with kids, you can tell your kids what you want them to do, but they're not going to do what you tell them. They're only going to do what they see the parent doing. They're going to mirror their parents' actions. They're not going to listen to what their parents tells them unless it's with a slipper or a wooden spoon.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that a team models the behavior of their leader. And when they see the leader is calm, poised, methodical, high EQ, strategic and intentional and not getting exasperated, they can't help but go, I can't be crazy and reactive and stressed out and all that because it's not going to fit in this culture that he's built or she's built. So I agree with you 100%. You got to lead by example, but to do that, you got to feel it. You can't just say it.